So thank you so much for joining us today. We're really looking forward to hearing more about your questions and hopefully supporting you with the application process to Recharge. Before we start the session, I'm just going to do a little bit of housekeeping. So you probably know by now, with all Zoom meetings, please keep yourself on mute. There's going to be opportunities for you to participate down the line. So oh, there's another cat here as well. Hello, cat. Right. So down the line, when there's time to ask questions, so you're obviously free to remove yourself from mute and speak then. If you have questions, I think there's some sections where Carol and I would be doing a Q&A. So in that section, it's best to keep your questions to the chat, and then we'll pick them up as we go. We're recording today's session, obviously, so you are free to stay on camera or go off camera. It's no problem. You're also free to step away from your laptop whenever you want to. We haven't really scheduled any breaks throughout the session today, but we'll see how we go if we need like a minute to kind of just refresh a little bit at some point. We're using the closed captions. They're not amazing, but they're not bad actually. So you can hide them if this is disturbing to you, or use them if this is useful for you. I quite like them. I find them really useful. So also just to say that this is a safe space, so there's very different people here today from different parts of the country with different levels of experiences with youth music funding, young people. So just please be respectful of everybody and everybody's opinions. Also, there are no bad questions, so please don't feel, we would like you to feel really like safe and comfortable asking anything that you want to ask. It's a judgment-free zone. Also, just to remind you that we are being recorded, so if there's some things that you don't want to share with the public, then maybe just grab one of us at the end, or just feel free to email us or call us if you want to talk about something that's a little bit more sensitive. Right, so with that out of the way, there's more people coming in, but you know the drill, just stay on mute for now, please. For those who don't know me, I don't see a lot of familiar faces today, which is kind of refreshing. Just Vicky, hi Vicky. I'm the Grants and Learning for the Southeast and the Southwest at Youth Music. I've been here for about 2 years. I've been supporting our program director, Carol Reed, to developing this new funding stream, And hello, and we're joined by Phoebe, our program officer, who's going to be supporting us in facilitating the session today. I'm gonna hand over to Carol and Phoebe to do their introductions. So Carol.
Hi everyone, I'm Carol Reid. I'm the Programme Director at Youth Music. I've worked here probably longer than I care to remember, but I've been kind of working really closely with Jana on this fund kind of pulled together and rolled out.
And yeah, hi, I'm Phoebe. I'm Programme Officer at Youth Music in the Grants and Learning team. I'm going to keep that one short. But yeah, hi, nice to see you all.
Thank you. So the way it's going to work today is that we have asked people to submit questions beforehand, and obviously we've been receiving questions through our grant holders on the Eventbrite. So what we did is that we did a sort of divided the questions in themes. So we've got eligibility, budget, proposal, and then the process of the application and like the grant making process. And we kind of put in the top 5 or top 8 in some situations of like the most asked questions in each section. So the way it's going to go today is that Carol and I will kind of do a Q&A. I'll ask a question, Carol's going to reply, and then once that's done, we are going to open it up to the public, and then that's where you're welcome to share your questions with us. Unmute yourself and share your question with us. We ask that when me and Carol are doing the Q&A bit, that you just put your your thoughts in the chat or your questions in the chat rather than interrupting us, just because it's just easier for the flow. There's a lot of questions and we just want to make sure that we answer as many as possible. Also, what was I going to say? I forgot. Oh yeah, please keep it to the theme. So if we're talking about eligibility questions, just please keep your questions about eligibility criteria. There will be opportunities to ask different questions throughout the different themes, or to open it up at the end for things that we haven't covered, so don't worry. Before we start the Q&A bit, Phoebe is also going to do demo for CC Tracker. So CC Tracker is that what we call it? Well, yeah. So our grants portal system, it's Phoebe's sharing her screen at the moment.
Can you all see this?
Yeah, can you see it?
Yes, so yeah, there's our grant application system, just so you have an idea of what it looks like. Exactly. You will need to register, so like the usual email verification process. But yes, it is grants.youthmusic.org.uk. I'm just going to go to my applications here. And for example, let's say I'm doing the recharge fund. So that would be here, and then it's kind of just you apply here. So there's lots of different sections. Let's go here. Why not? Let's see what it looks like. So it's like any kind of application, job application, grant application. It will take you through all the bits. So yeah, that's what our system looks like. So let us know if you've got any questions about that. It can be a bit temperamental, but it should be all set up and ready to go.
Is everyone okay? Cool. I see nods and thumbs up and stuff like that. Also, I apologize. My voice is a bit short, so I hope you can all hear me clearly, but I'm trying to enunciate as much as possible. Yeah, right. I'm going to hand over to Carol. She's going to talk to us a little bit about Recharge and the background and why we're doing this. So Carol.
Yeah, and I'll try and keep this brief, but basically just wanted to kind of chat to you about like where the funds come from and what we're trying to sort of do with it. We were approached last year by one of our core funders, the People's Postcode Lottery, to apply for an additional award. And it came like really soon after we published a piece of research, which was about how sort of youth music organisations had been affected by COVID. So what that application kind of enabled us to do really was kind of respond directly to the findings of that research. And two of the big things that were coming out was just around kind of the importance of core funding sort of in the future. And then also the other one was kind of mental health and well-being for both kind of young people and for, volunteers, for staff, for freelancers that people were working with. And that's really what's kind of informed these fund outcomes. And then in terms of kind of who we're targeting it at, it really is targeted at the organisations on the kind of the smaller end of the scale, just because, we know through day-to-day conversations that we have and people who are coming in to apply for us that generally these organisations will have kind of fewer resources to do this type of work. They're kind of less likely to have high levels of kind of core and sort of flexible funding. Less fundraising capacity and all that kind of thing. So that's why we've capped the eligibility where you have to have a turnover of less than £1 million. And then just, I guess, lastly, in terms of the focus of the fund, what we want to kind of do with this is to kind of help you to kind of look forwards post-COVID. So, putting your organisation in the best position to be kind of a sustainable organisation into the future. And, what that looks like will be different for different organisations. But that's kind of what we're trying to do with it, and hence trying to kind of build in this kind of element of flexibility into the programme. I'm just going to now, I'll just quickly screen share as we're going to now move through the next set of questions. I'm trying to click it onto slideshow. It's not clicking. Oh, there we go. So can everyone see that? Okay. And just, it might be worth me saying that the 4 sections that we're going to cover is the first one's about eligibility, so like the criteria. The second one's about kind of the scope of the work that you want to do, the proposals. Third section about budgets, and then the last one about kind of that application form, decision making, and reporting. So Jonna, do you want to?
Yeah, thank you, Carol. So this is the Q&A portion. It's a little bit formal, guys, but we're going to try to make it fun and like bounce on something. So bear with us, but hopefully we are trying to address all the questions that we've got quite a few times. So yeah, eligibility. Also, I cannot pronounce that word. So thank you for understanding. Right. Question 1. We are based in England, but our reach is international. Can we still apply?
I say it really depends on how your reach breaks down. So obviously we fund organisations through this fund that support children and young people in England, Scotland and Wales. So we'd want the majority of your beneficiaries to be based there. So if most of your reach is international rather than these countries, then we recommend that you don't apply.
Cool. Thank you, Carol. That sounds really straightforward. I think I've got another straightforward question for you. Are there any restrictions for organizations that are currently in receipt of a grants from the People's Postcode Lottery?
No, no restrictions.
Right. Did we say that this money is coming from PPL?
Yes, we did.
Yes. All right. Yeah. Okay. So that's why there are no restrictions. That's why the question's been asked. All right. This is a reserves question, which we got quite a few of, and a variation of this question. But I think we've kind of worded it into two different questions that are coming up now that cover all of the reserves questions that we've had. So question 3. Our reserves are higher than our annual running costs, as the expenditures during the last financial year were exceptionally low due to the effects of the pandemic. Can we still apply?
So I'm aware that the application form itself asks you to enter data from the last financial year, but we are also asking for a copy of your management account so we can get an idea of what's going on for you in this financial year. So if your expenditure was down last year, but has risen again this year, we will be able to use this year's figures instead. And the way that we'll get that is by obviously looking at your management accounts for your forecast budget to obtain the information. But we would, if you were successful, we'd ask for like a bank statement or a few bank statements, really just to kind of cross-reference again, just to make sure the information in those management accounts is accurate.
Great, thank you. Question 4, we have reserves, but also specific income losses due to the pandemic. Can we still apply?
It really depends on the amount of reserves that you have. So if they're higher than your annual running costs, you can't apply.
Which is the criteria that was outlined in the guidance. So yeah, right. The criteria for the recharge fund identify that it's open to charities that have a turnover of up to £1 million. We have a turnover just slightly above that. Can we still apply?
No, sorry. And I know that is quite arbitrary, but you know, the reason that we've capped it is just for the reasons that I was kind of explaining before.
Yeah, we get a variation of this question a lot, and unfortunately we can't really make exceptions. So yeah, thanks, Carol. Last question. Two more questions. Could you clarify what you mean by free reserves? Our unrestricted funds are actually mostly made up of designated funds. Should we only count funds that are truly unrestricted, i.e. not these designated funds, as free reserves?
Correct. So we wouldn't include the designated funds in our definition of free reserves. However, when we assess your application, we'd be looking through your accounts and working out what those funds have been designated for. And we kind of use that in our assessment of, you know, your organisational need for the funding. So, for example, if you, you know, let's just say you had a load of money put aside to support organisational well-being and organisational development, then we probably think you had that covered and perhaps we're the best match for recharge. But yeah, it's fine to have them, but just we'd look at what they were for.
Great. And last question, which also we get quite a lot, it ties into the turnover again. So one of our local services would like to apply for a recharge fund. Their turnover is less than £1 million. However, the wider charity's turnover exceeds that figure. Can the service still apply?
No.
Again, no. Yeah. Thank you. I forgot to mention before that we will be sending out these questions. So don't worry if you think you've missed something. And for the newcomers, this is recorded. So you will be able to listen to this again. And also the questions will be sent. I can see a few questions in the chat. Wow. Phoebe, do you mind just like flagging up any questions that you've seen throughout, and then Carol and I will try to answer them?
Of course. Do you want to quickly cover the CICs are eligible for this fund? I believe, yes.
Yes, they are eligible. Let me just have a scroll through these chats questions.
There was one that said, will you look at cash flow forecasts if management ongoing budget is still less than reserves?
Hang on, let me come back to that. I've just got David Hopkins's question. When you say reserves, do you you need free reserves, or do you include designated risk reserves, restricted funds? I don't actually know what risk reserves are, but we would, in free reserves, we would not include restricted funds, and we would not include designated funds. So hopefully that clarifies that one. If our management ongoing moves to lessons. Jane, yes. So will you look at cash flow forecasts if our management ongoing budget's still less than reserves? I mean, obviously, when we get your management accounts, it'll have your annual budget in there. You know, hopefully, you know, you'll be bringing us up to speed on kind of what's happened so far this financial year. So we can kind of make assumptions based on the information that's in your management accounts about what your annual expenditure is likely to be. Hopefully that answers that question, but if not, then feel free to pop something back in the chat.
Possibly you could keep doing the Q&As and then we'll get to some more specific ones after. I don't know.
There's a few that we can address now, Carol.
Yeah, and then the Southwark Music, is it true of the music education hubs that are part of the local authority? Our turnover as a music service is less than £1 million, but we're part of the local authority. Unfortunately, yeah, that makes you ineligible as well. Ali, we've just gone through a structural change in the past year from a CIC to an arts charity. We accept accounts under the old organisation. We have the same SC, I don't know what that means, but effectively, if you're the same organisation and you've just gone through a name change and it's slightly different to the way that you operate, then yes, but you might need to follow up on that one by email perhaps, and we can get a bit more information. I think that's all of them that I can see.
Yeah, it's all of them.
Yeah, you're good. You're good.
Thank you. Anything else? Does anyone want to come on off mute and ask a question, or is this working? Are you able to follow? I don't know who I'm asking it to because I can't see anyone's faces, but I guess if anyone has a comment, just please feel free to make it now. No? Cool. Someone came on. Yeah.
Oh, hiya. Yeah, it's Manny here from True Cadence. Quick question. Can you still apply if you have an ongoing grant with youth music?
You can.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else? Cool. Should we move on to section 2?
Yeah, I hope you're going to bring the banter now because I'm not feeling it.
I mean, I'll try. No pressure. Right. So this is a little bit tricky because I think this is probably where most of you would want to speak up because it's about proposals, right? So we did not specify in the guidance what we want. I mean, we gave examples, but we're trying not to be prescriptive. We're trying to really be open to what works for you, what you want to do in your organization with your staff. So obviously the question that we get the most is, what's going to be funded? What's likely to be funded? So Carol, question 1, what is likely to be funded?
I think all we can say at this stage is that there's probably going to be quite a diverse mix of proposals funded. So the examples that we gave in the guidance, yes, I'm sure we'll be funding some of those types of activities, but I do think we'll probably get new activities and ideas through, like ones that we perhaps hadn't thought of when we were writing the guidance. So we're pretty open really as to what those things look like, as long as they're going to meet the fund outcomes.
Great, thank you. We get a lot of this question as well. So our organization is allowed to apply for the salary costs of a new role?
Yes, they are, and existing roles as well.
Yeah, we do say that you're allowed to pay salaries and freelance staff costs and stuff like that in the guidance. Moving on to question 3, and we get that question quite a lot as well. So what's the split between because as you know, we've got 2 outcomes that you need to respond to as part of this grant. So we're keeping it quite open and trying not to put any specifics, but you do still have to apply to kind of reply, sorry, for lack of a better word, to 2 outcomes, which is a sustainability outcome and then also a well-being outcome. So we've been asked quite a few times, how do we do it? Like, what's the spread between these two areas? Is it 50-50, or what do we do?
It's really down to kind of your organisation and what you want to sort of major on, and what your needs are. So it can be split in any which way you want it to be.
Cool. So again, quite open and free for everyone. I like this before last question. I've gotten that quite a lot, where people are a little bit in disbelief about not having to do direct delivery with young people. If you've been funded by Youth Music before, you know that this is exactly what we do. We fund direct delivery with children and young people, well, mostly what we do. And so I did get a question: do we genuinely not need to do direct delivery with children and young people through this fund?
Correct. That is not the focus of this fund. The focus of this fund is about organisational and workforce development. I mean, of course, children and young people will benefit from that if you're still here, if your staff are happier, and all the rest of it. But this fund is about organisational development. It's not about doing direct delivery with young people.
Super. Thank you. Finally, last question is about Fund Cs. So if you are not a Fund C, so don't panic if you don't know what Fund C is, because if you are a Fund C, this is a question for you. And if you are a Fund C, you'd know that you're a Fund C. So not relevant to people who don't know what Fund C is. Our current Fund C grant holder is likely to apply to sustain posts when their current grant comes to an end.
I should have checked whether this one came from a Fund C grant holder or not, but if it has come from a Fund C grant holder, I'd say probably give us a call and chat to us about what you want to do. But I think maybe they might do, but they will also be coming in to apply to our Fund B programme as well, and probably some of that will be to sustain posts.
Thank you, Carol. We're going to open up to the floor, because I kind of feel like this is where we're going to have a lot of questions. And I just saw something in the corner of my eye about double checking. Jane, well-being for young people or staff and volunteers?
So staff and volunteers, definitely. I think, there's also scope there to think about how you work with young people in terms of supporting their well-being. And are there kind of improvements that you could make in terms of the way that you work to do that better? So I think one of the examples given was, like, for example, about like how you evaluate your well-being impact with children and young people. So I mean, that is kind of primarily staff and volunteers, I would say, but obviously if your organisation is kind of getting better at support and well-being, then that does run to children and young people as well. But it's not to run our well-being music project for children and young people, if you see what I mean. It's not that direct delivery aspect. It's about learning and organisational development.
There's another question in chat. Carol, though, or Phoebe, I think we need to move one slide ahead in the power.
Sorry, my screens. Oh, there we go.
There's a question from Tamsin.
So when we ask how many young musicians we work with on a regular basis each year, we work with different groups of musicians for 4 to 7 days each time. I think we said it was five or more interactions, didn't we? So maybe just jot up the total of the different groups of musicians that you work with in order to be able to respond to that question. It doesn't have to be 100% accurate. It's just so we can kind of get an idea of the scale of your activities.
Sasha, did you want to ask?
Hi, yeah, just a quick one. I know the focus is on organisations and improving their capacity and ability, but can you, I know it's not direct delivery, but could you, if you're trying to develop a piece of work around well-being for your young people, can you include those delivery costs as well?
Yeah, if you haven't got those delivery costs from somewhere else, then you could include those as well.
Okay, and just a second part of that, could you also, I mean, our organisation could potentially apply under any of those suggestions that you put forward in your list. So could you have a range of activities which will focus specifically maybe on core cost, resourcing, capacity building, and as I said, mentioned, so you can do that. You can have a bid that has a number of different funding streams within it, basically, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so like, I don't know, let's just say you wanted to work with like a business mentor and you wanted to fund a bit of salary costs and you wanted to do something else as well. Would that be okay? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I mean, I would say just don't kind of spread yourself, don't spread the impact of the budget too thinly.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can definitely do a mix.
Thanks.
Thank you, Sasha. We've got Rachel.
Hi, hello. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Yes, I just kind of thinking around the well-being issue. We've got a group of young leaders on one of our programs. They're aged sort of between 15 and 19, going on 20. Could they be included in the well-being activities, as they are also involved in supporting activities for the younger participants?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, thank you.
Carol, we've got 2 questions in the chat. One from Alison. Can you clarify scale of activity again, please?
I'm not quite sure I understand that question.
Yeah, me either. Alison, are you still here? Oh. I'm just gonna scroll through. If you're here, Alison, you can.
Sorry, I couldn't find my unmute button.
No, it's slow. Right.
You were mentioning earlier about the scale of activities. I think that meant, and I didn't understand what you were talking about. It was something to do with maybe the amount of times you meet the people, or I'm not quite sure. I didn't understand.
Okay, that was to do with, there's a question in the application form that says how many children and young people do you work with on a regular basis or something like that. And we've said like a regular basis is like 5 or more interactions. So it's just for us to get an idea of like almost like the size of your programs for children and young people.
So is there a minimum or maximum for that? Do you know?
No, it's just so we can get a sense of, you know, what the scale of your work with young people.
Okay, that's lovely. Thank you. Thank you.
Carol, we got a follow-up sort of, we've got 2 questions from Caroline, I think, but a follow-up straight away from this one was, can you clarify if it's pre-COVID years, how many children and young people we engage with? It's a good question.
Do I know the answer?
Yeah.
I think we want it to be recent. It's got to be recent, really. So I'd say like in the last year or so.
I think we know that coronavirus happened. We know that it's had an impact on everyone's organizations. We know that the numbers are going to be irregular. So don't worry. I get asked that quite a lot as a grant, you know, from my grant holders, like no one's going to get punished, or no one's going to be looked at, you know, unfavorably because they've reached less young people. So yeah, don't worry about that.
Yeah, I mean, we're like monitoring information all the time about, you know, obviously we've got over 350 grant holders at any one time. And every time someone reports to us, you know, we're getting the numbers of the young people that they've worked with. So, you know, it's definitely, it went down quite significantly last year from the previous year. And yeah, we know what the situations are out there.
Cool. So from Caroline again, do you have any preference as to the medium of the application, written, video, or slides? We would like to consider a video submission, but are nervous as to how we could pull together within the deadline and with all the stuff back to remote working. Thank you.
No, we don't have a preference. So we do this for another one of our funds, the Incubator Fund. And I think when we've looked at the stuff, like we kind of, there's not like one medium that has a higher success rate than others. I would say if you haven't got time to do a video submission properly, then don't do one, because it can be quite boring if someone's just kind of talking into the camera. And obviously what you're trying to do is kind of make that part like engaging and give a sense of who you are. So yeah, that would be my advice, but it doesn't matter what medium.
And we do offer the various mediums to make the application a little bit more accessible. So some people might not be comfortable with writing. So that's why we offer the option of video. It's not that we favor a medium more than the other. It's just trying to make it as open to everyone as possible. There's a question from Hannah. Do you consider, sorry guys, sorry about the voice. I hope you can hear me. Do you consider retrospective funding, for example, the salary of a new member of staff who has recently joined the team, but who has already started?
No, we won't be doing retrospective funding with this fund.
Cool. Is that clear? Yeah, I guess I was asking myself that question. Is that clear? Yes, it's clear. Thank you. Jenny Beer, do we have to apply for the same amount each year, or could we apply for a decreasing amount year on year? IG, if part of the funding is used to increase fundraising capacity, the hope would be that our funding position improves as time goes by.
Yeah, no, you don't have to apply for the same amount each year. You can mix it up.
Cool.
Does that make sense? Johnny, you looked a bit...
Sorry, someone just came into the Zoom. Yes, of course it makes sense. And I got distracted. I was thinking at the same time of a follow-up question, so slightly distracted. Cool. We don't have any more questions on the chat as far as I can see. Does anyone else want to come off mute and ask us a question or type it in the chat before we move? Oh, yeah, we've got one. From Danny. Danny, I'm not going to read it out loud because I'm really worried I would mispronounce it, but Carol, I think you can see it.
I can see it.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Well, we don't have anyone who in our organisation who speaks those languages, so we would need to get them translated. So if you can do them in English, that would be helpful, but it's not insurmountable.
Thank you. Sorry, Danny. Oh, David. Yes. Hi, David.
Hi there. Just a quick question on putting a budget together, because I'm very aware that you've put a kind of an outline of how many grants you're looking to give at different values. If our proposal doesn't necessarily meet that, then could we still get accepted but get less core funding, for instance? How would that work? How should we pitch it in terms of putting that budget together?
Shall I answer that one now? Because we have actually got a slide on it.
Have I jumped the gun? Sorry.
A little bit, but might as well just do it now. It'll probably come up again, but I don't know, Carol, what do you want to do?
Yeah, so I would just say these are the things, because also another question that we had is like, are you kind of steering people towards how much to apply for? So we're not, but these are just the things, I guess, that you would need to kind of consider when you're putting your proposal together. So how much do you need, first and foremost? Kind of what your existing turnover is. So like we wouldn't expect, you know, if you had a turnover of like 30k, we wouldn't expect you to come in for amount like higher than that. Whether you are a youth music grant holder at the moment. So really with that one, you know, we're not going to kind of double fund the same costs that you might be getting on your existing youth music grant. And then just bear in mind that we're going to be making fewer larger grants. So that's not to say don't come in for the full amount. It's just really to kind of say, well, you know, the level of competition at that level is going to be higher. So that's just something that you would need to kind of bear in mind.
Thank you. We'll circle back to it because we asked this question of different kind of variation of this question in the last section of our talk today. So yeah, we're still taking questions on proposals. There's a question from Davinia. What percentage of turnover could you apply for per year?
There's no kind of set criteria around this. I guess the things that we'd be kind of looking for is, so I mentioned before about kind of growth and development. Like if you are going to kind of grow through this funding, then try and make sure that's kind of proportionate and kind of managed and incremental. You know, we do kind of want to know that you can fundraise beyond youth music as well. So we'd be kind of looking at, you know, where your other income is kind of currently coming from when we do the kind of financial assessment of your organisation. But there's not really a kind of limit or a sort of cap on what percentage of a turnover you can apply for.
Great. Thank you. Oh, Jackie. So if our turnover is 30K per annum, would it be okay to apply for 30K for 3 years equal 90K or 30K over 3 years, so 10K a year?
I mean, technically you could apply for either of those. You know, I think maybe with that one, if you're if your turnover is currently 30k, I think just going back to the question that we had before from Jenny, for example, it might be that you try and like decrease it in years 2 and 3, because if this is about kind of, you know, trying to support your organizational development, then part of that is about getting income from other sources as well.
Great. Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you, Carol. Oh, yes. Thank you for doing that, because my brain kind of went foggy for a second. Yeah, Jackie, do you want to come off mute and talk a bit about this a little bit more? Are you happy with where you are at?
No, I'm just embarrassed of my question, really, because I don't do the fundraising.
Oh,
it's my other co-director, so she'd probably kill me when she hears this. She goes like, what a stupid question. Well, we know we're actually heading to kind of like build up sustainability and create membership programs within the project. So of course I can see that it would be this tapering thing whereby, you know, we need the help in the early stages, but hopefully the sustainability is built with our relationships within the community, and therefore we taper it off. So I was just trying to get a clear idea of kind of, you know, what the overall kind of, I suppose it's not percentage, but if our turnover was 30, you know, is that 30 over the 3 years, or could it be like, you know, 30, 20, 10, for example, so we kind of scale it down that way?
Sometimes these questions are quite hard to answer, like in terms of not knowing the specifics of stuff. So if there's something like this where you kind of come off the call and you actually just need a follow-up conversation with us, then we can do that as well.
Perfect. I'm best in touch with Jana, so I'll let her do it. Yeah. Thank you.
No question is a stupid question, right?
Yeah,
Jana?
exactly. No question is a stupid question, honestly. So this is probably useful for a lot of people there. So thank you. Don't. There's no judgment. This is a judgment-free zone, and just ask any question. It's the time to do it. So please don't hesitate. Thank you. For the question. Anyone else? No. You might be safe to, you know, go to the budgets questions, right? So for anyone who joined us halfway, what we're doing is that Carol and I'm sort of asking the top 5 most commonly asked questions to Carol, and then she responds to them one by one. And then we open it up to the floor to kind of for follow-up questions. So keep your questions to the end of each section, and keep your questions specifically within the theme of each. You'll see how it goes. You'll figure it out if you just came in halfway through. And then towards the end of our session today, we'll have another open moment where anyone can ask us anything. So don't worry. Also, we are here. So if you feel like you don't want to say anything today, please don't hesitate to call us, you know, or message us or email us, and we are happy to answer your questions at any point. Right. So budget questions. We've got 7 questions in the budget section. Oh God, I lost you guys. Sorry, I don't know where everyone is. Sorry, bear with me. I'm trying to juggle 2 things. There we go. Right. Carol, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Thank you. Do the salaries in our proposals have to be the real living wage level as a minimum?
Yes. So due to an admin error, i.e. me forgetting to put it in the guidance notes, this wasn't included in the first version of the applicant guidance notes, but we've since updated it. So basically, for those of you who don't know, there's a thing called the real living wage, not to be confused with the government's living wage. And Youth Music's a living wage funder. So basically, what we want to do is make sure that any sort of posts we're funding through our funding are paid at the real living wage, which is calculated on an annual basis and is basically like how much somebody needs to live on. So it's higher than the government minimum wage. And the other differentiation is that, you know, it's the government's minimum wage or living wage is kind of age dependent. Whereas the real living wage isn't, and there's also a different amount for London as well, just recognising that kind of cost of living are higher there. So there's, if you wanted to kind of find out what the amounts are, if you just Google like real living wage or living wage campaign, and it tells you what the current rates are.
Phoebe's very kindly already put the link in the chat, so you've got it there. Thanks, Phoebe. And another link. Yes, thank you, about a blog. Right. Follow up a second. Question number 2. Do we need any match funding?
No, you don't need any match funding.
No. No, we don't. So usually for youth music grants, we ask for a little bit of match funding, but not in this situation. So yay. Question 3, can the money go towards increasing our reserves?
And I just say I had to check this one internally because we've never really funded organisations to increase their reserves before. But we all came back with the same kind of recommendation, is that yes, a portion of the money could go towards increasing your reserves. But just obviously remember the rest of the criteria within that. You know, for example, projects need to be a minimum of 1 year. You need to meet the 2 fund outcomes. So we wouldn't just fund an organisation just to solely increase their reserves. There would need to be other activity around that.
Thank you, Carol. Likewise, can the money go towards repaying a loan?
I think, yes, if the loan was taken out kind of during COVID or as a result of COVID, but again, just remember like the sort of totality of the proposal needs to meet all of the fund criteria.
Thank you. And again, another question kind of in the same vein, would you invest in organizations that are in deficit?
Yes, we would.
Great, thank you. So question 6, can funding be rolled over to year 2 if we've had an underspent in year 1?
Generally, yes, but you would need to seek approval for that at the time.
It's usually simple. You just email your grants and learning officer and have a conversation about it. So nothing too scary. And finally, the last question around budgets. The guidance notes specifically that you will keep 10% of the total grant as a final payment. Is this 10% the full grant amount? Of the full grant amount, sorry.
Yes. So just to follow on from Jackie's keeping it simple earlier, if we made a grant of £10,000, then we would keep £1,000 and release it at the end of the grant once you submitted your final report. However, if you are a small organisation and you've got cash flow issues, you could make a special request to have it earlier.
Yeah, and it's usually the same process with all of our grants, at least Fund A and Fund B. This is the way we operate, and the incubator fund. Right, so these are the most commonly asked budget questions that we've had. I've seen things in the chat. I'm just gonna pop over there. Right. Right. So a question from Nick. Consultancy costs are often quite difficult to estimate in advance, although obviously we can get quotes to back up our proposal. So do you have any suggestions about how best to present potential consultancy costs? Will you need to see quotations at any point? It's a good question, Nick.
So I would just say, I guess it depends on what they're for. There may be other people that you could ask that might know what the kind of going rates are. So like, for example, if it was something around like digital, then I'd recommend having a chat to the Arts Council's Digital Culture Network team, and they might be able to kind of advise you, and there potentially could be kind of other types of organisations that could support. But just give us like the kind of universal figure, and just try and base it on either what you've paid in the past, or perhaps you could speak to peers and people who might have done kind of similar work and get some estimates from them. I mean, there is generally like flexibility, and, you know, say you put 10K in and you awarded the grant, and actually, you know, it worked out that it was going to be 12K. Well, there might be another budget line that you had in there that you could take that money from. So we're quite flexible about kind of moving costs around once the grant's been awarded. And you don't necessarily need quotes, but I mean, that again, that could be another way of just finding out what going rates are.
Thank you, Carol. From Davinia, what level could the funding be used to build reserves to? Is this the same as the Arts Council?
I don't know what the Arts Council amount is. I mean, we wouldn't, I mean, generally we'd probably look at like your reserves policy and see what is you want to get them to. We'd look at kind of what level of reserves you've got at the moment. So and we probably wouldn't want them to go over what would be 1 year's running costs. But there's no set criteria around it.
Thank you. Pardon, sorry, I interrupted someone.
No, I just said thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. I guess it's all about, oh no, I don't have it anymore, sorry. Right, Annabelle, I see your question about I see your question. We're going to leave it for the next section because we do answer it in our Q&A, and then we'll come back to it if you think you need a little bit more on that. Jackie, is it okay to pay another youth music project to mentor us in specific areas?
Yes.
That's cool. It's nice to utilize your networks as well. So it's always, partnerships are always interesting. Sasha, did you have your hand up anew, or is it?
No, it's a new. Just quickly, I mean, you might have answered it actually, because as I put my hand up, someone mentioned it. But in terms of rates, I know you mentioned the real living wage. Is that the only rate you have? Do you have standard rates for other things? And I think when the person was talking about consultancy fees, but do you have rates of pay that you operate by for, say, project managers, or do you just go by industry standards? And say if we've got music tutors, what rates do you go by? Project managers, what rates do you go by? Do you allude to what the Arts Council use, or?
We actually did a session on this in Empower Hour. I don't know if you were there. So we don't kind of recommend at the moment kind of set rates. I mean, obviously there's the musicians union stuff that perhaps some of the roles that you're talking about could apply to. We want to make sure that people are paid fairly. You know, I guess we realise that, you know, some expertise does cost. But yeah, we don't kind of have kind of set rates that we would kind of work with.
Okay, thanks.
Phoebe, is the Empower Hour, was it recorded?
Yeah, we're just figuring out what to do with like communications regarding that, but I have made some notes and we've got the recording. So yeah, that will be something that is out at some point once we figure out, you know, what we're actually advising ourselves and stuff. But yeah.
Cool. So maybe we'll follow. So if you subscribe to a newsletter or you go on our network website regularly, there's a blog section on there. That's where we tend to kind of put all of that information, write-ups from previous sessions. So we'll try to we're going to be sending slides and this conversation, as well as the FAQ question, well, the questions and answers document after this session. But if we don't have that specific Empower Hour ready by then we'll probably put it in a newsletter or on our blog for you to find later. So yeah, thank you. Oh, Phoebe, you said, oh, sorry. There's a Facebook group. Is that in relation to just joining and kind of?
Yeah, it's just another means of communication, really. If anyone's active on Facebook, it's quite useful for sort of networking. And I just post regular updates there when we launch a new fund, when there's a new video out, when, you know, sort of related to the Youth Music Network. So if you'd prefer to join that as well, there's that.
Thanks, Phoebe. The link is in the chat event if anyone's interested to join. A question from Rachel. This is a proposal related question. So we're going back one theme, which is totally fine. In the application, do you need to outline the long-term benefits impacts for the children, young people from the organizational development well-being work? Is this part of the assessment criteria? Oh, I guess it's a bit of a question, theme 2 and theme 4 question, Carol, but do you want to?
No, you don't need to outline those longer term benefits. I think we're quite confident about what those will be, i.e. you'll be there working with them as an organisation, and hopefully, you know, your music leaders, your workforce will be more motivated and all the rest of it. So I think we can see what those long-term impacts will be.
Thank you. Management account. We've got a question from Tamsin. In the management accounts, should we include the recharge grant in the budget?
It's up to you. Yeah, it's however you want to kind of forecast it. I don't know what your level of management so we ask for management accounts on one of our other funds as well, and the variety of different formats and the kind of levels of complexity that people go to is massive. So I don't want to kind of make any recommendations. If you're someone that's used to kind of going, scenario 1 is this, scenario 2 is that, you can do, but we won't be kind of, you know, if you haven't included recharge, then as a grant, then obviously don't include it as the expenditure either. But we're not going to recommend whether it needs to be in there or not. It's totally down to you. Sorry, did that answer the question, Tamsin?
Tamsin,
Just while we're waiting for Tamsin to potentially type, just while we were doing the youth music plugging stuff before, we were actually recruiting for a grants and learning officer in our team. So the job that Jana does, which is a great job and a lovely team, even if I do say so myself, Phoebes can maybe post the link in the chat, and the deadline's the 5th of January. We're particularly looking for people who've like either worked on kind of youth music type projects or who've kind of got experience working in the music industries. So yeah, if that sounds like you, then please do take a look.
Tamsin is happy with the answer, so thank you. But we've got a question from David. David, don't be sorry. More questions. We love answering questions. If an organization works across multiple art forms, we cover music, dance, and drama, would it be only staff working solely on music who could benefit? That is a very good question. The vast majority of the young people we work with each year are young musicians.
I mean, I think rather than looking at like the posts themselves, I think we'll be looking at the wider organisation. So if music is your kind of majority art form, if it's, you know, young musicians that you're kind of reaching the most, then that sounds fine. And, you know, if there's a bit of like art form stuff in there, then, you know, that's kind of not a biggie.
Great, thank you. So we're going to move on to section 4, and it's the last section that we're covering, and it's about processes and the application process. For those of you who just joined us, Carol and I are just going to do we're going to answer a set of questions that we've been asked the most, and then we're going to open it up for questions from the floor. So we're covering right now questions from application decision making and reporting processes. Right. Are you ready, Carol?
I am ready.
Yeah, we've sort of answered this question before, but I'm going to ask it again just as a refresher and for people who've joined us right now. So are you steering people towards set figures to apply for?
Deja vu. So we're not steering people towards set figures, but we would say just bear these things in mind when you're planning how much to come in for. Firstly, how much do you need? Secondly, you know, what's your existing turnover? So we probably wouldn't expect you to come in for an amount that was much higher than that. Have you got an existing youth music grant? So we don't want to kind of double fund the same costs or fund stuff through this that actually you could do through an existing grant. And then just the fact that there'll be fewer kind of larger grants being made. So if you want to come in for the full amount, that's totally fine. It just means that the level of competition might be higher. So that's something that you would need to weigh up.
Thank you. A bit of a follow-up. Should we apply for the maximum amount then, with the understanding that it may be reduced?
I mean, I would just say I'd refer people back to the answer before. Maybe we can pick up on Annabelle's question now, where she was asking if, I think, you know, would you potentially just fund 75% of what we'd come in for if you thought we'd ask for too much? And, you know, yes, potentially, not because we thought you'd ask for too much, but probably just because we're trying to spread the funding as widely as possible. But what we, you know, what we would be doing if we were reducing costs, like, would be, we wouldn't want to then therefore like completely change the kind of the scope of what you'd wanted to do. So we try and keep reductions so that they would have kind of minimal impact on what it was you were trying to do.
Thank you. Question 3. With just 40 grants available and a lot of flexibility regarding what organizations can apply for, what criteria is youth music going to use to choose between strong applications? Is there going to be a balance given to ensure that the funding reaches all parts of the UK, for example?
Yes, there will be. So for people who don't know us, like, one of our things is around kind of equitable funding. And so we're always pretty hot on kind of making sure that our money goes to all the different regions of the country, and particularly areas where it's needed most. So we do envisage funding work probably in each of the regions of England. We'll also make grants in Wales and Scotland. And, you know, what we want to do really is to see like a diverse final portfolio, because we think that there's lots that we can learn from this fund. And so actually having kind of a diversity of projects as part of that's going to be really interesting for us and for the sector. So just in terms of how things work with decision making, and just to kind of like take a little step back here, because we are a funder, and one of the lovely things about being a funder is kind of telling people that they've got money. One of the kind of worst parts of the job is kind of turning people down, and unfortunately we have to do that more than we're able to kind of say that people have got the money. And like, you know, most of our grants and learning team, like we've all been on the other side, so we've all been there, you know, putting our heart and soul into a funding application that then ultimately kind of gets declined. So just to kind of manage expectations now, for if people are turned down, it's very kind of rare that we turn stuff down and just don't think it's a good project or don't think the work that you're doing is valuable. It's just sheerly kind of competition. And the way that we kind of make decisions, so each application will get assessed. And, you know, as part of that, it comes like an assessment report and like a score. But we don't just fund the ones that have like the highest score. What we then kind of do once we've got all the assessments in is kind of look at them in the round. So we kind of take a whole portfolio approach, and really we'll be looking to kind of make sure that across that there's a diversity of different types of work, of different geographies, of different types of organizations, whether that's kind of older, newer, you know, bigger, smaller. Probably want to like look at having some projects that are perhaps on the riskier side, and again, like with a bit of innovation. And then whilst this fund particularly is not directed at, you know, delivery with children and young people, we'll also be looking at just generally the children and young people that you work with, so that we've got kind of a diversity across kind of different age ranges and different kind of backgrounds and that kind of thing.
Super. Thank you, Carol. Our last question is about reporting. So what sort of reporting do we need to do if we are successful with the recharge fund?
Good question. So I've got a slide on this, and just to say that we'll probably publish the report and templates in the next few weeks as well, so they'll be available online, but we're trying to keep it streamlined. So all grants will have a final report, basically saying what you've done, how much you've spent, whether you've leveraged any additional funding, how many jobs or freelance roles that you supported through the work, and then more of a kind of narrative stuff around, you know, what's been your kind of key learning and what would be your recommendations for other people, what differences the grant made, and that's specifically around the 2 fund outcomes, any diversity and inclusion changes in your organisation, and then an optional communications section where you can send us photos and case studies and quotes. And then if your grant is going to be longer than a year, there'll be a sort of interim report once per year. And that's kind of got more of a monitoring focus, basically just saying like what you've done, anything that's kind of affected your delivery, priorities for the next phase, and whether you might want to make any changes to your budget or kind of activity plan, and then how much you spent so far.
Super. Thank you so much, Carol. So does anyone have any follow-up questions about the decision-making and reporting processes or the application process? For any of you who have joined us a little bit late, Phoebe at the very beginning of this session has made a demo on how to sort of access the application portal in our, what do we call it? In our application portal making space.
Well, it's the technical thing that we call it internally a CC Grants Tracker, but I think I've been calling it the Grants Portal.
Grants Portal, yeah. So if you've missed it, Phoebe did do a little demo, so to find out how to do it if you've never done it before. But yeah, I'm also gonna open it up to any wider question if anybody has. Oh, our postcode. Oh, Jackie says our postcode can easily go against us. Do you wanna talk a bit more about that, Jackie?
Yeah, just again, I'm not the funding director at German Station, but I am aware that we live in a pocket where if you were to put in the postcode, it doesn't tick the harder to reach areas in an obvious way, although we're very aware of where they are within our community and the increased mental health issues in our young people, because we're working very closely with the schools and with a sort of a project that's funded by the lottery to support keeping young people safe. So when you talked about geography in that process, how does the postcode come into that?
It doesn't really. I mean, we're kind of aware of like which areas have got, like, for example, a really low cultural infrastructure or a really high on, you know, the index of multiple deprivation. But really, like, it's about who you're working with as well. And you know, on the application proposal, like, one of the questions is around, you know, tell us about your organisation and who you work with. And obviously, youth music's focus is young people facing barriers because of who they are, where they live, and what they're going through. So it's just about kind of making the case for how your organisation is working with those kind of young people in the wider proposal.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Carol. We've got another question from Jaya. If we work with a range of people, including children, young people, what % of work with youths are you ideally looking to see? Oh, don't worry, Jaya. We're happy to answer all questions.
Yeah, so I think the way that I'm interpreting that is that, like, you might run an adult program and then you might run a young people program as well. So let's just keep it simple and say 50% of your work is with adults and 50% of your work is with young people. Then we wouldn't, for example, fund 100% of your organisational costs, because actually the dimensions of the work that you do with young people is only 50%. So you could come in for the 50%.
Thank you. Did I miss any questions, Phoebe? No, I don't think so. Are there any other questions? Anyone wants to come off mute and ask anything directly? Cool. So, right. So I'm gonna sort of wind the session down, but Carol, Phoebe, and I will hang out for another 25 minutes because we've put it down as until 12:30. So we'll be here until 12:30 on Zoom. If you want to just, have a bit of a, come ask us some more specific questions or anything like that, we are here. But if you want to go and do something else with your Friday, thank you so much for coming. And it's really useful to hear about your questions because it's not only helpful for other people, but it's also helpful for, oh, Sasha, sorry, do you want to?
No, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was going to say, presumably, if I'm quite a reflective person, so I go away and I think about things. Presumably, is there somewhere I can email? I think it's in there anyway, that I could maybe email if I had further questions, which after thinking about, doesn't come to mind at the moment.
Absolutely. I was just going to say that. This is our grants email. Basically, it goes into like all of the grants and learning team will see it. So one of us, if it's not me or Carol or Phoebe, one of us will reply to you. And we are a bunch of friendly people. Well, we are a friendly bunch of people, actually. And so please don't be afraid to email or call us. Again, we're very happy to support you. This is what our job is. I know that there's a fear sometimes from an applicant to bother the grant holder, but it's not at all that way. Please do. So we're very happy to help. And in case you haven't looked at the guidance yet, I would really recommend that you go away and look at the guidance, because not only do we have, the guidance in there, but we have included a lot of links and examples to what we want to fund or not, what we could fund, and also links to resources that can help you in the planning of your proposal. So I would really recommend you go and have a look there. Just a little bit of a reminder, the application is due on the 14th of January, and youth music offices are closed from the 24th to the 3rd. So I'm assuming we will not be there to answer your questions during that time because we will all be on holiday. But before and after, we are here to answer questions if you need us to. And again, Carol and I and Phoebe are going to hang out here if you want to kind of have a bit of a more of a personal one-to-one with us right now. Otherwise, I think I've covered it all. Did I forget to mention anything? Oh yeah, we will be sending out a link to this session and an email. We'll be sending out the slides as well, and we will be sending out the FAQ document as well, so you can have a read of all the questions and answers. We will be also doing a write-out. I don't know if this is the right term, but we'll be typing up this conversation in an FAQ document that we will also add to the guidance, or at least to the recharge page, so you can always access it down the line as well. Carol, did I miss anything? I feel I've been blabbing on for.
No, that's brilliant. All for me.
Cool. So we're here if you want to chat to us. Otherwise, thank you so much for coming, and you are free to go. It was really nice to see everyone, and best of luck.
Thank you.
Yeah, really nice to see you.
Be safe and happy holidays. Sorry, I'm terrible. Out of practice.
Thank you, youth music team. This is really much needed. This fund. It kind of really taps into some of the challenges very small organisations are facing at the moment. So I just wanted to thank you for recognising that and sort of putting this out. So great stuff. Thank you, and for the session. Bye.
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 Thank you. Happy Christmas.
Bye. Thank you. Happy holidays. Oh, I could tell some people are going to hang about. Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming.
Definitely hanging about. So.
Nice.
Thank you, Jane.
Manny, do you want to go for it? You look like you've got
Yes.
lines up, something.
Yes, definitely. Nice to add the face to the names that usually pop up on my emails. So yeah, like fantastic sessions. Thank you so much. Yeah, I did learn quite a lot from it. And yeah, so I think my question is more around like the thinking budget, well, like the rent aspect of the thinking budget. So at the moment, like we've been so like it has been very tough because the demand has been there, but we haven't quite been able to like get like a permanent space that can accommodate the number of people we think work with. So we've started looking for a space now. So at the moment we're renting think spaces on a project to project basis. Yeah, so I feel like it's a lot tougher to like really support the people like we want to support, because like we don't have that room. So in terms of the rent aspect of the grant, is that more geared towards like organizations that like have an existing space already? I want to cover the rent for that, or like or can we actually think propose getting a space through that?
Yeah, you could propose getting a space as part of it. It doesn't have to be that you've got one already, because obviously, you know, as you've kind of said there, the win is that, you know, you've got permanent space, you can work with more children and young people, and yeah, it'll probably make your lives a lot easier if you're just working out of one venue.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely, yes. So because it is quite tough. So yeah, especially going virtual as well, and yeah. So but yeah, thanks a lot. I think that's all the questions I've got. I'm so sure there are 20 more people looking to jump in. But yeah, thanks again for the session. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Penny. Thank you.
All right, take care, everyone.
I don't know how we're gonna do this actually. So I think you know, laws of the wild, just jump in. If anyone has any.
I'll ready to go. Shall I jump in there? Yeah, so one of the things that's come out of our work during the pandemic has been around digital, and we've had various grants from Catalyst and CAST to develop that work, and that has funded a kind of 1 day a week part-time program manager. But in terms of the organised strategic development long term, we'd like to kind of maintain that post and increase that. Is that the kind of thing that could be funded in the
Yes
round?
Yeah,
Thank you. I'm going to stick around because I just want to, you know, it's useful just to hear other stuff. Thank you very much.
Welcome. Vicky?
Yeah, thanks, Yana. Yeah, I think somebody asked this question a little bit earlier, but I didn't quite catch the response. As a multiple arts organisation, you know, we do an awful lot of music, and obviously a huge funding coming through from youth music at the moment and hopefully ongoing. some of our ideas for developing and supporting our staff, there will be an absolute crossover between the staff that are working on music projects and on other art forms as well. Do we need to focus our proposal on supporting staff and wellbeing that are working primarily on music projects, or is it okay if there's crossover within other art forms as well?
Yeah, it's fine for there to be crossover.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Ali?
How you doing? You all right?
Yeah, hey.
A big part of our program is access to music lessons, and we charge a small fee for those lessons. It's £5 a class for an hour, which is obviously heavily subsidised. Is that okay? That the person that will be working in a large part of that program, that's part of an income generating stream for our organisation? That's okay. That's not sort of frowned upon or anything.
What, that you charge for sessions? Yeah, no, I mean, that's fine. But what I would just say is like, you know, I don't know if you've got like a fee remission thing that you have, just in terms of kind of making yourself as accessible as you possibly could be for people who literally can't afford to pay anything. Or maybe, you know, you could develop it over the course of the proposal. But yeah, kind of generally it's okay to charge for stuff, as long as then people who can't afford to pay have got the option.
Yeah, that's already in place as well, so that's great. Thank you.
So have you got are you phoning in from Scotland somewhere, Ali?
Yes.
Is that why you've got your hat on and jacket?
I'm always cold. I'm kind of lost of a wee bit of heat.
You have got heating up there.
Heating, internet, electricity, gas, the whole lot. You name it. Got it all.
Right. Only because I'm from the northeast and I've got some family members who've been cut off after the storm, you see. But yeah.
I think another quick question just about the sort of geography of how the funding, because it is a small amount of projects that will probably get funded, you know, in terms of how many applicants will be. Is there a kind of estimated number for instance, Scotland? You know, would there be a sort of ballpark number of projects that may get funded? Because obviously got a lot of regions, you know, that.
Yeah. There's not an estimated number. I imagine maybe about, like, I don't know, between 4 and 8 maybe in Scotland. It really depends on then kind of how many we receive as well.
That's great, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wants to jump in?
I'd like to, hiya. Like, again, just to say that, you know, Beth would normally do this, but I asked her a question this morning. We've been working in a very light touch way with the project, which is about 30 miles away from us. And they basically wanted to work with particularly one of our music leaders, because he's particularly brilliant at doing what he does. So we kind of partnered in to actually help them deliver what they needed to within the schools. And my question to Beth this morning was, does that in some way kind of put us in a worse position when we're applying for our own funding? Because we're working, I think the answer is no, but I just wanted to double check it. It's kind of like we're helping them deliver, we're partnering, but when we're doing our own application, we're looking, maybe we will partner with other youth music projects as well. Do you kind of see like you're already kind of working there, therefore you're working with youth music on a partnering? And does it kind of go against you when you're doing your own application?
I'm not sure I 100% understand the question, but basically, if you're partnering up with other youth music projects, and as far as we're concerned, that's a positive thing, because we want to see like provision sort of joined up locally. Yeah. So
okay. But it's only like they were the main applicant and they asked us to come in on it, whereby now we're going to be the main applicant. So it's our fund, and we'll be partnering maybe with them, but maybe with other youth music projects in the area. So I suppose my question's a bit naive, because it obviously broadens our reach as a project and we learn from each other. So that obviously is a good thing. And we've got a small fund from you at the moment, but obviously with this research application, it would be really specifically targeted to our own needs, as opposed to You know, I mean, I really felt for Manny there was saying about his space where, you know, I mean, we've just moved into a building, which is a bit scary because for the first time ever, we have regular rent. We used to hire, and now we've gone in COVID times to kind of go, right, we'll take on that responsibility, because we can actually give young people a space 6 days a week, where it used to be just like an evening there and an evening there, and you know, but they can own it, they can really have it for themselves now, and we're just kind of working out with them through like consultations about how they want to create this space. So this time when we apply, it's very much for the needs of our community, and immediately bringing the village work into the town centre. So I just kind of asked Beth naively, I was like, the fact that we're actually also partnering with someone else 30 or 50 miles away, and they're bringing us to help them deliver their project, does that kind of weaken our application? That was a naive question, maybe.
No, it's not at all, but yeah, that all sounds fine to me. Sounds appropriate.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, I'm going to breeze. Thanks very much, guys. That was really helpful.
Thank you.
All right, cheers.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go as well, Jana and Carol and Phoebe. Thank you so much. It's been a fantastic session.
You're welcome. And other people don't feel like you have to stay on. If you want to just sign off, then just go for it. It's only if you've got questions that you need to stay, or if you want to listen to what other people are asking. Does anyone even have any final questions for us?
I do. It's a bit of a weird one, but we have a voluntary organisation with its own bank account, and we have a limited company. Currently, our kind of funding that's been supported by youth music is coming into the voluntary, but as a result of COVID, we kind of had to use part of the limited company to do some of the spending. So our management accounts would be kind of across two. So how would be the best way of showing that?
Who are you going to be applying under for a recharge? The voluntary or the limited company? I'm
thinking it's the limited would be the best. But our kind of youth music track record would be through the voluntary.
What organisation you're from, Colin? I know those people's names, but
yeah, I'm from Blue Box, so I'm one of the Fund C delivery partners under NIMAS.
Okie doke, yeah.
Yeah, we're trying to get charitable status, charitable incorporated organisation, but it's just dragging its heels. So we've ended up with a limited company in response to some of the guidance from Charity Commission.
Right, okay.
So it's just not.
Yeah.
To me, I know what I'm talking about, but it's just looks messy on paper.
Yeah. Well, why don't you? I mean, are you keeping management accounts for both?
Oh yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So why don't you just send it for both of them and just put a covering note on saying like this is the situation, and then it's just full transparency and we get the full picture.
That's great. Yeah, that's great. And then just one other quick question. You said about the amounts we apply for not to exceed the turnover, but if we're looking to establish new roles or salaried roles, presumably that's okay, that the expenses are going to be more than current turnover.
Yeah, I think in that case, we'll be looking at like, you know, are they getting other income from other sources? Kind of, you know, even though this is going to kind of boost your organisation, then we just want to know that in order to be kind of a viable ongoing concern, that it's not just youth music money that you're reliant on. Yeah. So, you know, when we look through your accounts and stuff, we'll be looking at the different income sources and kind of what your sort of, I guess, proposition is as well beyond youth music.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of it isn't going to be there because it's relied heavily on volunteers to this point, and part of becoming the charity is about, can we access trust funds and things like that to help the salaries.
Okay, well, yeah, just try and include that as much as possible in your proposal, just to give us an idea of where you're at.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? No? All right. Should we just end it here now? Yeah. Thanks again, everyone. Really, really, really interesting conversations, and your questions are really helpful for us and also for other people to better understand the Recharge Fund. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Have a nice afternoon. Have a nice weekend and holiday.
You too.
Everyone.